Listening Skill 1. Example 1. Page 147. Listen to a conversation between an advisor and a student.
I noticed that a comprehensive exam is required for my major, and I'm not exactly sure what that is.
A comprehensive exam is given in the final quarter of your studies. Its purpose is to determine your overall competency.
But how is it different from a final exam?
Well, a final exam covers all the material taught in a specific course. A comprehensive exam, on the other hand, covers all of the materials taught in the entire program.
And is it true that it's required for my major? I mean, it's not an option?
Sorry, it's not an option. It isn't required for all majors at this university, but it is required for yours.
Number 1. Why does the student go to see the advisor? Number 2. What is the topic of this conversation? Example 2. Page 149. Listen to part of a lecture in an American literature class.
Okay, so we're going to look at some examples of the style of American literature known as the Beat generation. And yes, it is spelled B-E-A-T. To understand the unconventional experimental style of this genre of writing, you should know something about post-war USA in the 1940s and 1950s. That's when the Beat surfaced. So, immediately following the end of World War II, the U.S. experienced an economic boom, and materialism ran rampant. That is, people had started to believe that buying and owning more and more things was much more valuable than developing themselves intellectually and spiritually. Suburbs sprang up outside of urban areas. People chased the American dream. Now, some people began to feel that conventional literature, such as early 20th century modernism, for example, was too carefully organized, even, well, a little too conservative. As a reaction to the social materialism and formality of this writing style, a radical group of writers at Columbia University in New York began to create a form that broke with tradition, tearing apart or ignoring conventional literary structures and utilizing a bold, expressive style that was filled with raw feelings and language.
Number 1. What is the professor mainly discussing? Number 2. Why is the professor discussing this topic? Listening Exercise 1. Passage 1. Page 152. Questions 1 and 2. Listen to a conversation between a professor and a student.
Professor, I have a question about taking the Engineering 120 course that you'll be teaching. I already took this course once, but I didn't do very well in it, and I'd like to take it over again.
Why do you want to try it again?
Well, I understood about half of the material last time, and I think if I concentrate on the rest of the material, I can do much better next time.
It's possible to repeat a course to try for a higher grade, but are you sure that's the best choice? You won't get credit for the course the second time you take it.
I know, but I still have plenty of time to make up for that, and it's just that I don't want to take Engineering 121 without understanding this course.
Okay, that seems sensible, but you might consider another option. You could enroll in 121 instead of taking 120 over again, and just take fewer classes for the semester. That would give you more time to review everything and catch yourself up. And you wouldn't be doing all the work for 120 and not getting credit.
I've thought about all that, and I appreciate your advice. The thing is, I want to have the full semester to get a really solid handle on the basics, and I don't want to have to try to cram it in. I mean, try to brush up on all the stuff from 120 while I'm also trying to understand, more complicated stuff on top of it.
That seems like a legitimate concern. It would be a lot of work at the beginning of the course.
Plus, I would really prefer not to have the grade I got last time stay on my transcript. An A will look much better.
That's certainly true. So, do you know why you weren't able to keep up in the class last time?
Yeah. I took too many classes last time, and it all just ended up being too much. I just wasn't able to keep up on the problem sets, and when the exams rolled around, well, I didn't have enough time to study.
And you're sure that won't eventually happen again? By repeating classes, you're setting yourself up for having to take extra credit courses at some point so you can graduate on time.
Yeah, but now I have a better idea of how much I can handle. And I've really been making a point of finding out how much work there is for each of my classes before I register. I think I can prevent any more unpleasant surprises if I do that.
Okay. Well, you seem to have thought it through, so I'll support your decision. Remember that I have office hours and so do the teaching assistants. So if you're having any trouble, make sure you come and get help.
I will, for sure.
Okay. Now, there's a form we have to fill out that gives my permission and says you understand the not-for-credit issue.
I've got the form right here, and I've already filled out most of it. All I need is your signature at the bottom.
That's fine. You really do seem prepared. Give me the form and I'll sign it.
Number 1. Why does the student go to see the professor? Number 2. What is the topic of the conversation? Passage 2, page 152. Questions 3 and 4. Listen to a conversation between a university employee and a student.
I have a problem and I hope you can help.
Okay. What's your problem?
I haven't received my grade report from last quarter, and my friends all say they got theirs already.
They were all posted at the same time. So you say you haven't received yours yet?
No, I haven't.
Did you take all of your final exams? I mean, it's possible that if you missed an exam, then your grade report would be held up.
No, I took all my exams.
Did you have any problem last time you got your grades?
Well, actually, I'm a freshman. This is the first set of grades I've gotten. Or not gotten, I guess. My email hasn't changed or anything, so...
Wait, are you talking about your personal email account?
Yeah, the school sends us our grades by email, right?
No, they just post them on the university web portal. You have to log on to your student account and click on the grade report link.
You're kidding. I thought they were sent to our email.
That's not how it's done. It's more secure and easier for the university to post them on their own server.
Okay, now I feel stupid. I probably did get my grades. I just didn't know it. Sorry for wasting your time.
Don't worry about it. Starting college can be pretty confusing. There are a lot of new procedures you have to get used to. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, how much do you know about the university server? I'm not sure I remember my password. Will I have to see someone if I can't remember it and I need to enter a new one?
That's really not necessary. There's a forgot your password link. So you didn't use the server at all last quarter for your classes?
I only had to submit a couple of things through the university's computer system. I kind of avoided it, to tell you the truth. I'm not very good at dealing with complicated websites like the universities. And I was able to get assignments from the syllabus or ask about them in class, so I sort of got around using it very much.
Ah, I see. Well, in any case, you'll probably want to get comfortable using the university server. I think that for higher-level classes, the professors tend to use it for posting assignments and discussions. They interact with students more often that way than they do in the lower-level classes. In fact, I think a lot of them require you to participate in online discussions, or they announce changes in the course on class pages. You might miss something important if you avoid checking it.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
Number 3. Why does the student go to the office? Number 4. What are the speakers mainly discussing? Passage 3, page 153. Questions 5 and 6. Listen to a student consulting a professor.
Okay, so what exactly did you need to see me about today?
I've been looking up information about the 3 different lakes you assigned to me, with an emphasis on how each lake was formed, and I'm just not sure if I'm approaching the assignment correctly.
I'm not sure I understand. Are you asking me if you should approach the assignment in terms of the formation of the 3 lakes?
Yes, that's sort of right. I guess I'm not clear on if you want me to present the different ways that the lakes formed, or you want something more.
Well, simply put, the answer is that I want more. I'd like you to do the research and determine what else you could discuss besides just presenting a demonstration on their formation.
I've already done a lot of research and, I've noticed that each one of them has a claim to being the biggest lake in the world. I was considering discussing this and trying to provide examples of why each lake can be called the biggest lake.
Aha! You're already ahead of the bunch. That is what I was hoping you would expand upon in your presentation.
Great! And, since I've already looked so much of this material up, would you mind answering a few more questions before I write up the assignment?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
Well, Lake Baikal is the deepest, so it has the most water, and Lake Superior is the biggest if you measured it by surface area. But they're the biggest in these ways only if you don't count the Caspian Sea as a lake.
But do you know why you might not define the Caspian Sea as a lake?
Haha, I was getting to that. First of all, it's between Europe and Asia and borders a few different countries, including Russia. Scientists think that it used to be connected to the world's oceans, but it got cut off when the land was uplifted by movements of the Earth's plates. That's why you could say it isn't really a lake. It's not fresh water.
Exactly. It's the world's largest inland body of water, but it's salt water.
So I'm thinking I should find some visual diagrams of the formation of all the lakes. Maybe some aerial shots of the lakes, or even diagrams of their formation. I think they'll really drive the point home about how they all had different beginnings. Then, I was going to use a chart to write out the facts about their size and features.
This all sounds good, but don't forget that it is crucial for you to understand, in detail, the formation of each lake.
Oh, I know. I found out that Lake Baikal is in Russia, and it formed over a rift in the Earth's crust, where it cracked apart. That's why it's so deep. In fact, I read that it's so deep that you could fit all of the water from all 5 of the Great Lakes into it. And I also read that the original formation of Lakes Baikal and Superior was similar. A really long time ago, Lake Superior also formed out of a fault. But the big thing that made it the way it is now was glaciers. They, were sort of cutting out valleys, but I guess the glaciers were also pushing down the Earth's crust with their weight and leaving a dent that was filled with water. Anyway, glaciers carved out all of the lakes, but in the case of Lake Superior, there was already a sort of channel for the glaciers because of the original fault.
Look, I think you have a very good grasp of the assignment. Have you thought about how to introduce your presentation?
I was thinking of starting with something like, how can 3 different lakes all be the biggest in the world?
I like it. Okay, I think we're done here. You know what you're doing.
Number 5. Why does the student go to see the professor? Number 6. Why are they discussing this material? Passage 4. Page 153. Questions 7 and 8. Listen to part of the lecture in a meteorology class.
Today, I'm going to be lecturing about the theories of William Redfield and James Espy. Now, both of them were American meteorologists in the 19th century. However, they had different ideas about how storms behave, and they each argued for their own models for years. And in fact, it became a wider debate as different groups of scientists in different places lined up behind one or the other of each man's hypothesis. So, for example, at one point, meteorologists from England were supporting Redfield's model, while many of those in France were supporting Espy's. But the real point I want to make concerns how competing models and approaches can sometimes actually be complementary. Okay, so now let me outline the models. Espy argued that centripetal force was at work in storms. Now, as you know, centripetal force would cause winds to move inward from all directions toward the center of the storm. So he was basing this on his hypothesis that storms are caused by rising currents of moist, wet air, or convection currents that form clouds. Now, as the air rises, air is drawn in from all directions. But, as logical as it sounds, this model hasn't proven completely accurate in the case of the biggest and most powerful storms. Now, that brings us to the theory of the other meteorologist, William Redfield. He argued that the winds in a storm rotated around the center of the storm, so the winds would be moving in a circular path. And he believed that the winds moved in a counterclockwise direction, This theory was based on his own observations, especially from a hurricane he witnessed that hit New York City directly in 1821 and also affected surrounding states. He noticed that crops, corn, fruit trees, had been flattened in different directions in different parts of the state of Connecticut, where he was living at the time. So, this led him to believe that the winds were going in different directions around the center of the storm. And he also collected a lot of eyewitness accounts to back this up. Now, it's important to note that Redfield didn't know why the winds were rotating around the centers of the storms. He was basing his assertion on empirical evidence. That is, on what he saw with his own two eyes, not on the results of a hypothetical prediction. This was in stark contrast to how Espy had arrived at his claims for wind direction in storms. And, in fact, this was another point of argument between the two men. Redfield disrespected Espy for relying on his model of storms instead of observation. In any case, Espy believed that centripetal force caused winds to move inward toward the center of a storm, and Redfield believed that the winds in a storm moved in a circular, counterclockwise direction. So, it turns out that Redfield was correct in terms of big storms due to the effect of the Earth's rotation. You see, winds do indeed rotate counterclockwise around the center of the storm. Oh, and incidentally, they go in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. However, Redfield wasn't making his observations there. But, and here's where the complexity of meteorology becomes apparent, it turns out that Espy was not entirely incorrect. Winds do move toward the centers of storms because of convection currents. Espy just didn't take into account the effect of the rotating Earth on those inward-moving winds. So, to sum it up, there are a couple of important themes for us to think about here. One is the different approaches towards scientific explanations of natural phenomena. Redfield's emphasis on what he observed, and Espy's on what his hypothesis predicted. Another is the idea that sometimes the competing hypotheses that scientists fight furiously over turn out instead to be complementary models. That is, each one can help explain some specific aspect of a process, or the process under certain conditions. So if Espy and Redfield had put aside the desire to win the argument, maybe they would have appreciated this fact sooner.
Number 7. What is the topic of this discussion? Number 8. Why is the professor discussing this topic?